everybody. This is Pete from PA Labs, and today I've got another of the how-to for those of you interested in developing your own war games. I want to go through my new AI logic that is spent the last week working on. Movement and combat are essentially done. Resupply is almost done. So with my phases, the combat phases, we have the high level. Level bombing. Okay. And then we have artillery. And then we have movement. And then we have combat. Okay. So, high-level bombing takes care of all your major bombers and that sort of thing, and will most likely take care of all of your fighters. You may actually have an extra fighter to use in defense, but that pretty much wipes out all the airplanes' usage for land combat. And then we have the artillery phase where all the artillery units fire. So that takes care of those units off the board. So now we have movement. So movement encompasses everybody who still has points. Now, if they've participated in the first two phases, they have no movement points to do anything else in the turn until the resupply phase and they get their new movement points. So we're going to look at the movement cycle. So what I do in the movement cycle is first we verify that a unit can move, okay, and if he's physically sitting in a zone of control, and this goes back to yesterday's video on using the arrays, row and column, to be able to look up these values virtually instantaneously, makes this extremely fast. So if a unit can move and he's in a zone of control, he's not moving. He's given the command of hold fast. Okay. If he can move, I go ahead and wipe out his movement, so it takes him out of any other logic in the turn. So if he can move, what I do is a flood fill, just like I do for the human movements when you select a unit and I shade the big area that they can move to. I do that, and then I examine each hex in his range of movement and find out if there's if the hex is in an enemy zone of control. Okay, so if it's in an enemy zone of control, then I know there is a enemy unit adjacent to that hex. So I'm not necessarily looking for an enemy unit. I'm just looking for the enemy zone of control. So that's a real quick lookup against the pointer to the map hex array. Okay, and so then what I do is count how many friendlies are in that enemy zone of control hex. If there's already 2, then I ignore it and keep looking. If there's less than 2, so if there's only 1 unit, because we're moving 1 unit at a time, I then will move to that hex, and then we move on to the next unit. Okay. If no suitable hex is found, so in the entire range, you're way the heck on the other side of the map, basically, and you cannot move to an enemy hex, Then what I do is a search to find the nearest enemy unit and retrieve that A1 search path, the shortest distance from where you are to where the enemy is. And then for this turn, I move along that path until my movement runs out. So the hope is that on the next game turn, somebody will be in range that we can move to and go forward. Okay, and then we spin to the next unit, and we do the same thing over and over and over. So if you were to actually spin all of the arrays necessary from 1 to count, this would be a whole lot longer search and try to decision making to move. Okay, so I actually have the problem that it's too fast. So I actually have to slow this search down, because what I'm doing in the back end, because this all runs through a server between two opponents, or even AI, which is running on the server, and then you have your human player, which is also running on the same physical unit, but it is separate process, is the game. I have to pass messages back and forth to say, hey, move this unit from this point to this point, and then send that to the server. The server moves the unit, then sends out to the human player, because this is the AI move, right? So he sends to the human player to tell the human player to move this unit from point A to point B. So he moves the unit from point A to point B, and then he has to redo his map to reflect the change and display all of that. And then he's done. And then by that time, the game AI has moved the next unit. And again, the process repeats over and over and over. Okay, so that's the movement. So then we get into the AI combat logic. So the hope is you can move next to an enemy unit and still have 2 movement points available. So that's why on the game units, I have we have a movement field, and then we have a used movement field. So we can say I've moved this unit from point A to point B, and it cost 3 movement points out of the 6 that I have. And so doing the math between those 2 units tells me that I have 3 movement points left. All right. So I'm going to be adding additional game units to the system as I expand the system out with facilities. So we'll be actually having, because right now I believe we have infantry moves 2, artillery can move up to 6 because they're attached to vehicles to move, and armor can move 6. So we're going to come up with some interim sorts of units, like let's see, what did they call them in World War One? The flamethrower guys that came across the trenches. But we're going to have like an attack infantry, maybe a recon unit, or maybe the Rangers or something to that effect. And they'll have a higher movement for infantry, and their offensive specialization is in offensive movement. Traditionally, infantry is defensive, but it's also offensive. It's kind of a split between the two. So moving on with combat logic. Combat logic gets a bit complex. This is the third, I think, combat logic I've written for this game, and this is the one that works out very, very nicely in the game, and I like it. So it's kind of a load balancing, maximize number of attack logic, okay? So what it does, and instead of starting with my units and seeing who they can attack, and that approach, kind of like movement, I do it in a reverse order. I find the enemy units and then see who all can attack that enemy. So I actually spend all the enemy units looking in those the 6 adjacent hexes, because we're talking physical combat, so this is zone of control combat. So I spin the 6 adjacent hexes looking for attackers, and if found, I add them to the attackers list. So I have the defenders that I found, and then we add any other unit that's in that hex. So you can't separate out your defenders. When you attack a hex, you attack everybody in the hex. So we calculate a total defense of that hex, and then I look in the 6 surrounding adjacent hexes to find attackers. We verify that the attacker has at least 2 movement points left for attacking. We verify that it's not anti-aircraft and not artillery, because both of those have had their own phase for attacking, and that's the only phase they can attack in. So we then calculate each attacker's total attack. Okay, so that way we have the total defense and then each player's incremental total attack that they have. When we've done all of that, we take each of the attackers and spin the 6 surrounding hexes around that attacker. And what we're looking for is he unique to he can only attack this first defenders, or can he have the option of attacking multiple defenders? You could be adjacent to 2 or 3 units. So if you're adjacent to multiple units, I'm going to sort you to the bottom of my stack of attackers. So what I want to find first and add first to the combat is just those units that can only attack this one unit, or this one cell. Okay? So that's how that next little phase works. We look to see if each attacker is adjacent to multiple. We flag it, and then we sort, when we're all done, we sort all of the attackers by that flag, putting the unique attackers first and the multiple attackers second. We then start to look for combat. Okay, so we take the defender's total value and we start adding attackers at top to bottom and say, okay, we're going to add only the unique attackers, and we're looking to try to find 3-to-1 odds. So we add attackers until we finally get to 3-to-1 odds. So we may fall into 1 or maybe 2 of the units that have multiple attacks, but if there's excess units there, those will be the available next units for the next combat to look for. Okay, if we find that we can calculate 3-to-1 odds, go perform that combat, resolve the combat, and then go get the next enemy and do the same process. If we can't create 3-to-1 odds, we then respin the attack and say, can I calculate 2-to-1 odds? If I can calculate 2-to-1 odds, great. Let's go do that one as well. So we're looking to try to maximize the kills, not necessarily to injure a unit, but we want to try to kill a unit in total. That way he can't be resupplied next turn, and then I have to fight him again. So if I can kill you, I'm going to kill you, and if I can't kill you, I'm going to go ahead and definitely wound you severely if I can. Okay, so that is how combat works. And I spin every enemy that's adjacent to all of our units, all of my units, the attacking units, and try to find this matchup. And I found that the other demo, the last demo that I did on the game, you could see where we had 4 surrounding hexes attack a single hex that only had 3 infantry in it. And and because of that, we missed out on attacking other people. So in the calculation here, again, it goes back to our units. If you go back to the military types and the elements being used, the math basically comes out that 10 infantry equal 1 artillery, or 10 infantry equals 1 tank, or equals 1 fighter or 1 bomber. Okay. Now, with the combat working out, that's on cost side, but with the combat working out on a matrix sort of thing, that still basically holds. So we can calculate that, in all honesty, if that one infantry unit only has 3 attackers, he's got a defense of 1. A single infantry unit's going to kill him. That's going to be 6-to-1 odds. An artillery unit's going to be 12-to-1 odds. That sort of thing. So with this gets it down to individual calculations of unique values of the various units, and it opens up by sorting the attackers with multiple attacks to the bottom of the list. We use up the unique attackers first, and then we only dip into the multiple attackers if we have to. That way they can perform additional combats in the same turn and not be lost on overkill for any one attack. So that is my movement logic for the AI, and that is my combat logic for the AI. And it's pretty solid. I like it a lot. And I want to thank you, as always, for watching the videos.